this system actually works, because if I go in the negative direction, it makes sense. If I go from the Ionian node back 1, it makes sense for me to say I'm going -1 node back from the Ionian node, which is the negative first modal half step, which you would think would be the negative second scale degree, because you would think that if you went backwards, you'd have to make the one you're on, if it was a C, you'd have to make it the -1, right? Because and then you'd have to make this the -2, the negative second scale degree. But again, most people don't do it because it gets all messed up because of what happens here. So we have to just call it then a -1 major 7. The major 7 usually being tied to the 11 steps in the clockwise direction, but could also be thought of as the 1 step in the negative counterclockwise direction. But if you use this method, then it makes sense, right? It's -1 in the counterclockwise direction, and it's -1 modal half step in the counterclockwise direction. And if I take 7 minus 1, then I would have going clockwise 11 steps, which would be 12 minus 1 from the Ionian node, and it would be 6 modal half steps in the clockwise direction, which would be the 7th scale degree. You see how this is symmetrical. This works. This doesn't work because it's off by 1 because the measurement was off. So now we're going to continue this concept going backwards and think, okay, what can we do both conventionally, we'll cover that again, and then what if we're going to use this method and we're going in the negative direction? All right, so that's going to be the idea. Let me move this over a bit. So we'll move this over. We'll rock out a little bit as we do that. Let's move this over to here. And then I'm going to move these down because I don't need these anymore. Let's move these down to here. Oh, let's say we go -12, counterclockwise 12. So if we go a distance of 12, we've gone up an octave, or in this case, in the negative or counterclockwise direction of an octave. So what would be the local distance? 12 minus 12 would be 0, meaning we would be hitting this same spot twice. So that would be an II modal range or a 1-1 modal range, staying on the same point. But we want to go -12 distance away from that. So I could count up. So I'm counting up this time because there's 5 notes between the strings. This is going to go lower in pitch towards the ceiling on the guitar, 5 notes between each string. So 5, 10, 11, 12. So I could go up to here. That's our familiar shape. If you know the guitar, that you probably see it going this way. But now I'm going this way, and we see the octave going down in pitch in the lower direction. So I would call that an II and a -12. The -12 giving directionality in the counterclockwise direction and showing you that it is an octave. From a distance, then, we might call that conventionally a -12 perfect first. And note, we can't really say it's a perfect -8 or something like that because, again, we kind of lose scale degrees. So I have to say, well, 12 minus 12 is 0, which would be a perfect first. So I'm going to call it then a -12 to indicate that the distance, but I'm still going to call it a perfect first, which will tell me that it's going to be within, that gives me the interval, the flavor. But I'd rather call it something like a -12 from the Ionian node, telling me where I'm going from. And then I would still keep the zeroest modal half step, which would be the first scale degree. And that's because that local distance will still give me the flavor. However, if I wanted to drop that and say it the shorthand way, I could say, by the way, I could say either way that it's a negative Ionian 7th modal half step. So that's going negative in the -7 direction, which you would think would be the -8th scale degree, but we don't have scale degrees. Or you could name it this way. You could say it's the -12th Ionian node. Why? Because I'm naming it from the Ionian. Notice I can't do that over here with the normal conventional terms because the P doesn't give me any actual new information. It doesn't tell me the node I'm measuring from. So I can actually pick either tool that I want. I can say that it's a -12 from the Ionian node, or I can say it's a negative Ionian 7. That 7 being a negative distance because I'm going to assume that negative is flowing through to the 7. So I can say it's an Ionian -7th modal half step. So if I was to count If I was to count negative 12, one way I can do it is if I go backwards this way, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say. Now that 5, because there's a distance of 5 between the strings, repeats over here, so that's still 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then that repeats over here. Hold on a second, I think I messed up. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, and that 3 is over here, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that 6 is over 6, and then 7. So just to show you how you can basically count upwards and backwards if you know the distance between the notes. You can do it by shape, you can do it by scale shapes, and so on and so forth, but it's quite useful to be able to count up and back on the guitar, both in terms of half steps across the strings, as well as in terms of modal half steps as well. Okay, let's do the next one. Let's go ahead and rock out for a little bit and see if I can use my eraser this time. Does the eraser work? Yeah, eraser's doing its thing. Erase. Okay. Like I keep on pressing the mouse harder as though that's gonna make it erase more. That's not how digital erasers work. If you press the mouse harder, it doesn't help. So let's do the next one. Let's say we go back 13. So if I go back 13, then what's the local distance? 13 minus 12 would be negative 1. So the local distance would be a negative 1. So that would be a negative 1, which normally I would say would be, what would be the going forward distance? It would be 12 minus 1, or 11. So 11 forward would be a major 7. So 1 backwards would be a negative 1 major 7. So this would be a negative 13 major 7. That's what I would like to call it. And I can't really use negative scale degrees. But, so let's do that first. So if I go negative 13, let's go from this Ionian again. So if we're on the Ionian, then I'm going to say the local distance would be 1 back. So that would be going to 1 back to the locrium. So I'd say it's an IN modal range, although I'm going in the counterclockwise direction, which is a 1-7 modal range, but going in the counterclockwise direction. But I want to go back, 13. So I can count, there's 5 notes between the strings, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. So here we have it again. It's still an IN or a 1-3 modal range, but it's and a negative 12, giving us the distance of another octave and telling us it's going in the negative or counterclockwise direction. So I would like to call the distance then between this one and this one a negative 13 notes away from the Ionian node, which would be a negative first modal half step, that first being the local distance, not the full distance. But, and that gives me the flavor because that tells me it would be the second, negative second scale degree. If we had negative second scale degrees, which we don't because the scale degrees fall apart going negative. Okay, but you could drop either one of these. I could call it a negative 13 from the Ionian node, or I could call it an Ionian negative 8th modal half step, which would be the negative ninth scale degree if we had scale degrees, but we don't have negative scale degrees. That's why it's a major 7, which was the clockwise scale degree. Right? Okay, so let me count it up. If I try to count 8 backwards, so we're going to say 5, this is going to be 1, 2, 3. That 3 repeats over here. 3, 4, 5, 6. That 6 repeats over here. 6, 7, 8. So I can kind of count forwards and backwards. All right, let's do the next one.